I didn't even know. I'd never heard of X-Men. I didn't know there was an animal called a Wolverine.
Fans didn't fear Wolverine's enemies. They feared Hugh Jackman. Too tall, too polite, too wrong. Very few actors survive that level of rejection and rewrite the character anyway. This casting wasn't controversial because of the character. It was controversial because of the man chosen to carry him. Audiences didn't doubt Wolverine's violence. They doubted whether someone this composed, this articulate, this unexpected, could survive a role built on pain and endurance. Hold this question as the story unfolds. When everyone tells you you're wrong for something, do you walk away or reshape the thing itself? Watch the full video. Because understanding how Hugh Jackman became Wolverine means understanding how rejection can become the foundation of a legend. Before Hugh Jackman became Wolverine, almost nobody knew his name outside of theater circles. He wasn't a Hollywood tough guy. He wasn't famous. He wasn't American. And in an industry that often confuses aggression with masculinity, Jackman felt like the opposite of what audiences imagined when they thought of a violent, broken mutant with claws. He came from musicals, Shakespeare, and disciplined stage work where emotion was controlled, voices were trained, and physicality served story instead of spectacle. His background was built on precision, not brutality. Hollywood at the time had a very specific idea of what action stars looked like. They were loud, muscular in an obvious way, rough around the edges. Jackman, by contrast, was tall, articulate, warm, and openly kind. He smiled easily. He spoke thoughtfully. Casting directors didn't see danger when they looked at him. They saw reliability, clean energy, someone safe. In superhero terms, that was almost disqualifying. What made the moment so shocking was not just that Jackman was cast. It was that no one had been looking for him at all. He wasn't campaigning for the role. He wasn't chasing comic book fame. He was building a career slowly, one performance at a time, assuming his future would stay on stages, not sound stages. The idea that he would anchor a global franchise wasn't just unlikely, it was absurd. And yet that distance from expectation turned out to be the most important thing about him. Because Wolverine was never supposed to be comfortable. And neither was the man who played him. When X-Men entered development, Wolverine already belonged to fans long before cameras rolled. He had a fixed image: short, compact, brutal, animalistic. A man shaped by violence, not refinement. Comic readers didn't just want Wolverine. They felt protective of him. Any deviation felt like betrayal. Hugh Jackman didn't match that image at all. He was taller than expected. His face was expressive rather than hardened. His training leaned toward performance, not intimidation. Even the studio didn't initially believe he was right. In fact, he wasn't their choice. Another actor had already been cast. Wardrobe had been prepared. Marketing conversations had begun. Wolverine had a face, and it wasn't Jackman's. Then the production collapsed under its own weight. Scheduling conflicts, contract issues. Suddenly, the role was open again, and the studio was desperate. They didn't have time to search endlessly. They needed someone capable, adaptable, and willing to jump into chaos. Jackman got the call late, almost as an afterthought. What makes this moment so critical is how fragile it was. If a single schedule had aligned differently, if one contract had held, Jackman would never have worn the claws. His career would have continued quietly, respectably, invisibly. Wolverine would have belonged to someone else. Instead, fate handed him a role that was never designed for him. And the challenge wasn't to fit the mold. It was to break it completely. Hugh Jackman didn't ease into Wolverine. He was dropped into it. Filming was weeks away. There was no long preparation window, no gradual immersion. He had to transform immediately, physically and psychologically, while the industry watched with skepticism. He trained relentlessly, not to become larger than life, but to become believable. He studied the comics obsessively, not for surface traits, but for emotional patterns. He noticed how little Wolverine spoke, how often he reacted instead of explained, how rage was rarely explosive and more often restrained, compressed, waiting. Jackman worked on posture before muscles. He lowered his voice not to sound intimidating, but to sound worn. He practiced stillness. He practiced silence. He learned how to look like someone who had already survived too much to waste energy proving himself. And still, doubt followed him everywhere. Fans were vocal. Studios were cautious. Every article questioned the casting. Every early image sparked criticism. Even Jackman wondered if he belonged. He wasn't trying to look dangerous, he was trying to feel damaged. Because Wolverine isn't scary because he's violent. He's scary because he's tired of surviving and keeps doing it anyway. That internal focus changed everything. Jackman wasn't playing a superhero. He was playing a wound that refused to close. Wolverine is not defined by strength. He's defined by suffering. Hugh Jackman understood that before audiences ever did. He didn't approach Logan as a man who enjoyed violence. He approached him as someone who had learned to use it because nothing else worked. Every fight carried reluctance. Every growl carried restraint. Even rage felt measured, like something that had been practiced too many times to feel new. Jackman played Wolverine as a man who had outlived everyone he ever cared about. Someone who didn't heal emotionally even when his body regenerated endlessly. The claws weren't power, they were reminders. They came out when Logan had no other option. Violence was never framed as victory. It was survival. And that distinction made Wolverine feel different from every other superhero of the era. Jackman let pain live behind the eyes. He let silence do work. He allowed regret to linger after every action. He didn't chase likability. He chased truth. And suddenly, audiences saw something they hadn't expected. A superhero who felt exhausted instead of empowered. That choice transformed skepticism into belief. Wolverine worked not because he was invincible, but because he was human in a way that hurt to watch. As the X-Men films continued, something unexpected happened. Wolverine stopped being just another character. He became the emotional center of the franchise, not because he was louder or stronger, but because he was consistent. In a series that shifted tone, cast, and direction repeatedly, Jackman's Logan stayed grounded. Audiences didn't just enjoy Wolverine. They recognized him. His anger felt earned. His loneliness felt familiar. He carried memory from one film to the next. Loss accumulated, regret deepened. Jackman treated the role like a long conversation rather than isolated performances. Wolverine wasn't flashy. He didn't deliver speeches. He didn't chase symbolism. He showed up, endured, and survived. That dependability became his power. And over time, the franchise leaned on him more and more. Because no matter how the world changed around him, Logan felt real. That consistency is rare. And it turned a risky casting choice into one of the most enduring portrayals in modern cinema. By the time Logan arrived, Hugh Jackman had nothing left to prove. This wasn't about box office or spectacle. It was about closure. The film stripped Wolverine of mythology and left only consequence. An older body, slower reflexes, bones that healed imperfectly. Jackman leaned fully into fragility. This Logan wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting because he didn't know how to stop. Love replaced rage. Protection replaced vengeance. Violence became tragic instead of thrilling. When Logan fell, it didn't feel cinematic. It felt final. Like watching someone who had carried pain long enough finally put it down. That ending mattered because Jackman had lived with the character for nearly 2 decades. The goodbye felt earned because it was honest. Hugh Jackman didn't become Wolverine because he looked the part. He became Wolverine because he understood endurance. Logan isn't about rage. He's about surviving too long, losing too much, carrying pain forward without relief. Jackman brought vulnerability to violence and dignity to suffering. He allowed the character to age, to change, to break. He didn't protect Wolverine from weakness. He embraced it. And that honesty is why the character lasted. Hugh Jackman didn't just play Wolverine, he lived with him. And that is how a theater actor became a legend. Hugh Jackman didn't win people over by proving them wrong. He won by refusing to protect himself from the role. Wolverine worked because pain wasn't decoration. It was history. Every scar mattered. Every silence carried weight. That's why this version lasted. Not because it was loud, but because it endured. Now I want to hear from you. At what point did Wolverine stop feeling like a superhero and start feeling human to you? Was it the rage, the restraint, or the way he carried loss without explaining it? Leave your answer in the comments, and if you want more stories about how iconic characters are built through risk, rejection, and commitment, subscribe. Because the roles that become legends aren't chosen by comfort. They're earned by the people willing to stay when everyone else walks away.